Honda is the largest authorized Honda car dealership in Telangana. As you're aware, Honda is known for its reliability, ease of drive, and overall superior technology, ranging from Honda Amaze, Jazz to segment-leading Honda City, Civic to luxury CR-V. We have wide range of premium cars to suit all types of customers and their needs. Our automatics are the best in city driving. If approved by FICCI Flow Hyderabad, we would like to extend a special FICCI discount to all its members of this organization who purchase a car from Green Honda. Reach us on the below number. Thank you.
Namaste and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and our esteemed speakers. Welcome to yet another power-packed hour of scintillating conversations at Flow Hyderabad. Saul Miller, sports psychologist, once said in the New York Times that Formula is like playing chess at 150 miles an hour. In some ways, race strategy is the same as chess, said Ross Brawn, the strategist behind most of Michael Schumacher's 91 victories at Benetton and Ferrari. You know which direction you want to go in, and then try to be 3 or 4 moves ahead to outwit the opposition. And that's the premise of this afternoon session. But before we go there, I invite Chairperson Usharani Manni to light the divine lamp and deliver her welcome address. Over to you, Usha.
Eminent speakers Naren Karthikeyan and Tanya Sachdev, fellow chairpersons, past chairs, viewers, and my dear Flow members. Namaste. The power of play cannot be underestimated. Global evidence points to the fact that sport has the potential to prevent disease, lessen absenteeism at school and work, improve focus, enhance gender equity and inclusion, and build skills that promote employment and thus contribute to overall economic development. On a personal level too, playing any kind of sport brings out the leader in us. We learn to handle pressure and perform under any given set of circumstances. Sports prompt us to dig deep into the innermost reserves of our resources to pull out extraordinary performances. It also leads to self-discovery. Through today's discussion with 2 greats of Indian sport, we hope to understand the impact of sports and games on our overall personality and growth. September has so far been a buzzing month at Flow Hyderabad. We started the month with the launch of Thirumani, the flow-assisted brand of Cheryl Crafts. Apart from finding a place for it on the virtual shelves of WeaveSmart, we will soon see a physical presence for the brand in Indie Roots and Varanium. Talks are on with Fab India to include Thirumani in their range of offerings. I'm happy to share that it will soon feature in the national initiative Creative Dignity. In our social outreach efforts for agriculture, classes in organic pesticides manufacturing will be imparted to women farmers towards the end of this month. For Flow entrepreneurs, the WeHub incubation program has started with 5 cohorts. Post the formal inauguration of Flow Incubator at CIE IIIT Hyderabad, we launched the first boot camp this morning with 12 Flow participants. On successful completion, they'll move on to the Micro Accelerator program. We also initiated our Flow Biz Talk series with respected angel investment and women entrepreneurial incubation expert Sanjay Jasrani, who spoke to us about startups and funding sources. As part of our mental health campaign, we floated the Say No to Suicide video challenge on the occasion of World Suicide Prevention Day on September 10th. We participated in talks for healthcare professionals and students along with Apollo Hospitals Group and Rotary Club. Holistic lifestyle advocate and coach Lou Putino informed us about the food, mood, gut connection on the 7th. In the Power Hour with business leader Vinita Bali, we learned why EQ matters in the workplace. In association with Gete Zentrum, we presented Her and Now, a set of short films on women entrepreneurs. And in partnership with Maheshwari Connect, we brought the fastest human calculator, Neelakanta Banu Prakash, to you. It brings me great pride and pleasure to report that our new member intake stands at 91 from 6 rounds of interviews conducted in the last 4 months. The Knowledge Labs team of Shilpa Raju, Prachi Trivedi, Radhika Agarwal, headed by Ritu Shah, are thrilled to present to you the Knowledge Nugget series with the business of blogging. Hope you have sent in your blogs to them. If not, do it now. Your entries will be analyzed by the guest experts. Having made and continuing to make India proud, there are many life lessons one can learn from their personal and career trajectories. Thank you, Naren and Tanya, for joining us here today. I'm looking forward to a delightful and fascinating Power Hour. Over to you, Priya, now to take the session forward.
Mahati Velamati, Flow member, will give us a sneak peek now into Naren Karthikeyan's illustrious career path. Mahati?
Enzo Ferrari once said, I believe most things can be said in a few lines. So here I am with a few lines. Good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce you one of our illustrious guests this evening, a recipient of the Padma Shri Award by the Government of India. He has placed India onto the world map of motorsports. Naren Karthikeyan is the undisputed king of the world's racetracks and has carved a path that no other Indian has treaded before, leading India to glory on the world stage. Naren Karthikeyan is India's first Formula One driver with 46 race starts and is still the most successful racing driver from India, participating in many high-level international championships. Let me take you through a few of his achievements. 2019 Super GT DTM Dream Race winner, Japanese Super Formula podium finisher, 2009 24 Hours of Le Mans, finishing 7th, A1 GP multiple race winner, FIA F3 Intercontinental World Cup runner-up, Formula Asia champion, British Formula Ford champion. These are all his achievements and many more which you will see through his interview. Welcome, Naren, and thank you for your gracious acceptance to be a panelist at this event. Over to you, Radhika.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mahati. Tanya Sachdev is an Indian chess player who holds the FIDE titles of International Master and Women's Grandmaster. Tanya won her first international title at the age of 8 years. She won many events as a child. Her early successes include becoming the Under-12 Indian champion in 1998, Asian Under-14 Girls champion in 2000, and Asian Girls Under-20 champion in 2002. She also won bronze at the World Under-12 Championship in 1998. Tanya is a recipient of India's highest sporting honor, the Arjuna Award, which she received in 2009. She has been one of the 75 women in the world list since 2005. She is ranked number 4 in India. Tanya won over 35 medals for India in official events, playing with Indian colors. She represented India in 6 chess Olympiads. A Vishwanathan Anand fan, she became the 8th Indian to be awarded Women Grandmaster when she claimed the title in 2005. She won the Indian Chess Championship for Women in 2006 and 2007. She also won the Women's Indian Chess Championship in 2007 and decided to take up chess professionally. She became an international master in 2008. Tanya has won Commonwealth Championship 4 times, and 2018-19 was a hat trick. Besides being a player, Tanya is also a chess presenter and a commentator. She has hosted quite a few prime chess tournaments at international level. Example, World Championship Legends of Chess. Tanya has always encouraged children through her talks at various forums to embrace the spirit, a true ambassador of chess in India and world. Thank you.
Thank you, Radhika. That was a very sweet introduction, very humbling one.
Glad you liked it.
Yes, thank you, Radhika. So, ladies and gentlemen, our moderator is not able to join us here today, but as they say, the show must go on. So Usha and I have gamely decided that we will be the designated survivors, and we are carrying on, stepping in to do the needful. Since both Tanya and Naren had very hectic schedule, they could not say hello to each other before now. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a rapid fire as an icebreaker, and fun is totally intended. So Tanya, meet Naren, and Naren, say hi to Tanya.
Hi,
Hi.
Naren. It's great to see you here.
Same here, same here.
Naren,
Big
can
fan.
you guide?
Sorry?
Can you
I
turn
can't.
over, or can we have you on a wide angle? We're seeing very little of you. Yes.
Is it better?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, okay.
Yes. So, ladies first, and we will.
Yes.
No, it's too much pressure. Okay, let's go. Let's do this.
Two minds, short answers. So, Tanya, king or queen?
Oh, wow. Okay. To be honest, I don't have an attachment to a piece, but if I have to pick one, can I go with the knight?
So, none of these. So, you are the queen of chess.
That would be a very obvious pick to go with, but I think both queen and the king have their own roles to play, but I think the knight is a very tricky and a very interesting piece.
Great. Books, movies, or shows?
Do you have to pick one or place them in the order of preference?
As you wish.
Okay, because I like all three, let's place them in the order of preference. I think I'm going to go with books, movies, and shows. So exactly how you said it.
Appreciate. Proudest moment, Tanya.
Wow. Okay, so that's a difficult one, and I really hope that it's still to come. To be honest, that would be a nice thought. But if I have to come up with one moment that meant a lot or a memorable moment, if I have to just pick one, it's really hard. But I think every time that I played in the Olympiad and represented the country, that's been very special. But if it had to be one tournament, I think it would be the first National Premier Championship that I won. I think that was the moment that I truly started believing in myself.
So in chess too, they play the national anthem when we win.
Yes, in every sport, in chess as well.
So that's a goosebumps moment for all of us. Yes.
Every time. It never gets old, that feeling.
Absolutely. And you're most thankful to, apart from family?
100% my coaches. I think in every athlete's life, of course, the support system is super important, but the trainer's input and having that right guidance, the technical as well as game, psychologically, I think a coach's input is invaluable. So for me, it would be Vishal Sareen. He was my coach since I was 17 years old.
Okay. So now we're getting slightly personal. Love at first sight could be with anything or anyone.
Sorry, can you repeat that? You lost me at personal. Go on.
First sight, it could be anything also. So anyone, anything.
I think for me, it's a very easy pick. It has to be the chessboard. There was no looking back after that.
Fair enough. Idea of relaxation.
A holiday by the beach, reading a book, disconnected from my phone, and doing nothing at all.
Oh, is that not what all of us want?
Especially right now.
And holiday pit stop.
These are tough questions. Okay, a holiday pit stop. I think in India it has to be Goa, and if I have the chance to go anywhere in the world, I would pick Paris or Barcelona.
Whoa, wonderful, wonderful. Hope we meet there sometime.
Yes.
Refueling food.
Sorry?
Refueling food. Looking at you, I don't think you eat, but in case you do.
I'm not, you're breaking up. I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question?
Food.
Food, my favorite food. You know, I think because of all the traveling that we end up doing, it has to be home food, the rajma chawal and stuff like that, and butter chicken, of course. But I think my favorite cuisine is Italian. Yeah, I can live on pizza every day.
Doesn't show, Tanya. If you were to be an animal or a bird or a mythical creature, which would you?
A mythical creature, I would be a dragon. It would be pretty awesome to fly as well as to fire whatever I don't like.
You've endeared yourself to millions of kids, like I was just saying. And the final one, touch to move.
Touch to move? In what? I didn't get the question.
You have a touch move.
Yes.
You like it?
Yes, absolutely. I think in sports, one of the very important and key aspects of sports are playing by the rules and learning to do that and finding your best resources accordingly. And in chess, if there was no touch move, I think it would be chaos. But in life, I think it's okay to, take unconventional decisions and not follow the path.
Absolutely done. Thank you so much. That was lovely.
Is there like a gift hamper that Naren and one of us are going to win after this?
Interesting. I'll put that to the chairperson once you're done.
All right.
You need to unmute. Yes, there he is. And lots of questions are repeats so that we just get a contrast in view. Some of them are not. So we're starting with rain or sun. Naren?
I think sunshine makes our life easier on the track.
Ever stole a car?
Well, not stole really, but sneaked out with many cars. My friends, my family, unknown people, known people, and so on. So yeah.
So basically, you didn't tell them when you took it.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
And it qualifies as stealing for this answer.
Yeah, kind of.
Your proudest moment?
Proudest moment has to be, I suppose, being with Mike and Sumak on the same grid, representing India the first round of my Formula One World Championship when I made my debut in Australia in 2005. That has to be the proudest moment.
Great. And most thankful to, apart from family?
Apart from family, there are a lot of people to thank, but I think I made it all the way for, because of the support of one man who I rate the top. It has to be Mr. Ratan Tata.
Great, super. I think he's somebody the entire country looks up to, and yes, thank you so much for that. Love at first sight?
Sorry?
Love at first sight with anything or anyone. I'm letting you go easy on this also.
So professionally, of course, it's the Formula One car, and personally, it has to be my gorgeous wife.
Yay! Can we get a sneak peek of her?
She's not around right now.
Okay. Idea of relaxation?
Uh, Everything revolves around speed, so there's no question of relaxation for in my mind. It keeps whizzing past all the time, but it has to do something with cars and now it gives me great pleasure in guiding my little son as well. So all those things relax me a lot.
Is he going to be a speedster also?
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe he's very young, so his interests keep uh, jumping. But yeah, if he wants to, yeah, he has all the support for sure.
Holiday pit stop for you?
Well, see, racing is taking me all over the world. So I suppose back home, I'm very, I love to go to Kuno. My sister has a nice place there, so I like to go relax there. But I think in the other place I would like to be is, of course, Monaco and Macau, because both of them are great circuits and a great place to hang out as well.
Yeah, and great roads too, right? Remember, winding and slow and ups and
Yeah,
downs.
so they are the two greatest circuits in the world, like for sure,
The
Macau and.
Mediterranean right there, beautiful blue. Yes, can't miss that. Refueling food.
I'm okay with everything. I love Japanese food because I've spent 6 years of my life there, and of course, my mom cooks very well, so there's no lack of food in the house, all kinds. So I go with everything. Yes.
If you were to be an animal, bird, or mythical creature,
I don't know, animal, bird, or mythical creature. Maybe I don't know if Iron Man is mythical, but something to that, or a tiger or something, because that's my nature.
unbreakable.
Unbreakable in what context? And unbreakable in.
In spirit, in whatever, every which way, I suppose. Since you mentioned Iron Man, I was just thinking in those terms.
Yeah,
And finally, your advice for drivers, not just Formula One, I mean, just drivers.
I mean, anyone taking this sport, motor racing as a profession from India is very, very difficult because um, I think only 6 months ago the government recognized this as a sport itself. So we are up against all odds, and of course, where there's a will, there's a way. And I always believe that if you want something in life, you have to go after it till you get it, and you have to work very, very hard at achieving these goals. So I'm sure there are a lot of young drivers who want to make it to the top to Formula One, but I having made it, I know how difficult it is, and if they put all their efforts into it, it is possible. It is definitely not impossible, as I proved it.
Thank you. Thank you. And it was so much fun with both of you. And thank you for being so sporty about it. Wow.
Priya, I'm sorry. I think Naren has to increase volume little bit. We are not actually, it is not very audible.
Yeah, I was thinking.
Yeah. Can you please increase your volume, Naren?
Yeah, I don't know how to increase. I'm not a geek, so I don't know how to increase the volume. But we want.
He'll tell you times. That's how they.
I think this is the best I can do because I brought the mic closer. Yeah, the handheld device, whatever I'm using. So is this okay? Or I can speak louder?
Yeah, I think little bit. You need to speak loud.
Okay.
Okay, so we got a really, very quickly we got a nice character sketch, that revealed a little bit about both of you before we take that deep dive into your. So let's move on to the main session. And my first question is to Naren. You won your first motor race at the age of 15. And in one of your interviews, you said that in itself was pretty late, an age to start racing. So how did you even get a license at the age of 15? And on a more serious note, what inspired you to take up racing as a sport and to stay with it, for 3 decades, I think now?
Yeah, I think it's quite simple. I grew up in a family with, who my dad used to rally a lot. So there was always passion of motorsport in the family. And, so it was natural that I got into the sport. Secondly, I think, at the age of 15, you just about get into racing, and you don't even have a road license by this time. But of course you do. Abroad they do a lot of go-karting, so they're already qualified. But in our case in India, of course, when I started, then you had to get the consent of the federation, your parents, and all, and so on and so forth. So it wasn't easy, but I convinced everyone to say that I'm good enough, I'm safe enough, and that's how I made my debut when I was 15 years old. And 3 decades of racing, yes, I must love it, and or else you can't keep going at it for so long. I think it's the best job in the world by far. I love every moment of it, highs and lows, and it's the most challenging sport. There's a lot of danger, excitement, a lot of fun, and you get to travel to the best places in the world and see a lot of people and so on and so forth. So I wouldn't give this up for anything else, for sure.
So who was your inspiration to do this? I mean, this is such an off the beaten track. Less run.
Yeah, I mean, possibly, as I was growing up, my father was very successful in motorsport, and I looked up to the 3-time, the great late world champion Ayrton Senna. So because he was from Brazil, and he could kind of do things which which nobody else could, even and from a very similar kind of background to India, because Brazil, they don't have all the it's a poor country, it's a developing country like us, and against all odds, he made it to the top. So I think that inspired me a lot.
Absolutely. I think having a great support system is such an important factor for anybody to, bravely go out into the world and achieve greatness, I think, yes. And our EC member, Hira Rupani, has something to share with you about your father, because you just mentioned him. Can we have the spotlight on Hira, please?
Hi, Naren. I'm Hira Rupani.
Hi.
I have something, hello, Tanya, as well. I have a very lovely episode and good thing about your dad. It was more than 25 years ago. We were on the same flight from Malaysia, from Kuala Lumpur. And those days we didn't have cell phones, and we didn't have the cell phone plus a lot of other things. So I landed into Chennai, and before that, and I took my seat there. Dad was already on the flight. He shook my hand and said, I'm Karthikeyan. And that was very unusual, but it was fabulous. And after that, we started talking to each other. And we shared the good work, what is happening. Your mom has been incredible. I don't know that if you know about that, because you must be a young kid. You had not started your journey as yet. And he told me that once they found a girl abandoned in a garbage can, and they picked the child up. It was a girl child. They picked it up, and mom and dad started a shelter.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Yeah, so they have a shelter. I don't think people know about all the good work they do. Okay, that story is one and was really moving. Plus, we spoke about a lot of other things. But when I landed, my friend was supposed to pick me up. And it was raining. Cats and dogs were like such a heavy rain. He did not go. He waited. And he said, has your friend arrived? I said, there was no cell phone. So I said, no, I have to go out and wait. So I went out and I stood. And I was trying to call her from the public phone. I was unable to reach. And then he told me that, can I drop you? I said, I don't even know her address. You were supposed to pick me up. But my sister lives in Chennai. And I would like to go to her house. At least I know she lives in Egmore. And because it was 2 a.m. in the morning, those flights used to land so late. At 2 o'clock in the night, Dad waited there and told me, don't worry, I will drop you to your sister's house. And he not only took me to my sister's house, there was no doorbell down the gate. He took me up. He carried my suitcase, which was so heavy. You know how women travel. He picked it up himself. He did not allow the driver because it was pouring. He parked the car. He dropped me upstairs, rang the bell, made sure that I'm safe, and then left me. incredible. I will never ever forget this incident in my life. Please thank him. I have thanked him profusely, but there is so much goodness in this universe. People always talk in wrong things, but there's so much goodness. And you tell him that I told the story to you. I don't know if ever he will have shared the story with anybody else.
Yeah, but yeah, thank you. Thanks for this story. And you know, this girl is grown up, and you know, she works in the bio pharmacy now, and we have a further 10. After her, there were 10 more kids, which my father took them on, and they're all grown up. And you know, my family, from my great grandfather, we have a large charity background, and it's something that we all enjoy doing, and it's something that we want to give back to.
Yeah. But very nice, and how it really started. So I wanted to share this. I'm sure a lot of people don't know about that story, that how it started, and such a wonderful work. And really thank you, and say hello to your father.
Yes, I will.
He will never forget me, because I don't think he dropped so many people somewhere. It was nice, Naren, and really incredible. And thank you on your journey.
Thank you for this narrating this. Thank you.
Nice to see you, Tanya, as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Hira. That was so touching, and I can see you're still getting emotional about that episode. And you know, just shows that a kind word, a thoughtful gesture, they make memories forever. Thank you for sharing that. Now, Tanya. So talking about starting early, Tanya, you've been also playing chess since you were barely 6, and no one in your family plays the game. So what was your motivation? From where did you get that strength, or let's say the audacity to think you can be a grandmaster or an international master?
You know, to be honest, Priya, when I started playing, these thoughts were not in the head. I mean, when you're 6, you're not thinking about what you're going to be or what your career is going to be like. I think especially for a game as chess, it was very important. Like chess, it was very important to start young. It's a very competitive sport, and of course, you can play at any point. But if you want to become a professional, the younger you start, the better the odds are for you. I think at that time, everything that went into the game was little to do with me, but more to do with the support system that I had around me. I think it was primarily my parents who saw that I got introduced to the game when I was 6. It was my father actually trying to teach my brother how to play. He wasn't even telling me any rules, and I was watching them play. And I was like, okay, I was a very curious child and always wanted to know everything about everything. So I wanted to learn chess as well, seeing them play. And my brother didn't take to it, but I got into it. Papa was reading out of a rule book, literally. And fortunately, both mom and dad used to play sports in their school and college as well. So they always had that athletic mindset over academics, which was rare, especially back then, and especially in Delhi. So that was very, I think they saw that I took to the game. They knew that somebody around was training. They put a trainer in as a hobby. I got addicted to it, I think, started playing tournaments really young. And I remember my first tournament I played when I was around 7, and it was a state level open tournament. So there was no age group. I was playing against all these much older men, and it was 11 games, and I scored 0 points. So I lost all my games. And I was very, very competitive. I still am. And I think I speak for every athlete. I think being competitive is a very, very critical part of our character. So I was very competitive, and I was like, okay, I need to learn how to win. I need to learn how to get better at this game. And I think I just started playing like a hobby. And before I knew it, it just became a very big part of my life. And you sort of get snowballed into it. Once you start winning, you want to win more. When you lose, you want to get back to the board and win more. So yeah, it started as something that was never meant to be a big part of my life, but just became so.
Incredible. Your father learned from the rule book, learned moves to teach you. I think that's another story.
He gave up the moment he lost to me, which was literally 2 days from that rule book situation.
Yeah, but I think it proves that behind every child's success is a parent who, first person to believe in her or him. I think that-
100%. 100%.
And over the last few weeks, we've been interacting with your mother, and we can clearly see how involved she is also till date. So by the way, ladies, Anju Sachdev is a Flow Delhi member, and that makes them our family. Over to Usha now.
Hello, Naren. Yeah, you have to unmute yourself, Naren.
Is that okay?
Hello, Naren.
Hi, hello.
My question is, 2020 has taught us all the art of patience, be it waiting for the vaccine, or the endless Zoom meetings, or the social distancing, and of course, so many other things. How important it is to be patient in your sport that is so much about speed. Can you quote examples of those instances where patience helped you to win?
I think firstly, there are many situations a sports person faces, to be calm and, calculated and so on. So the whole world is going through a crisis and we all recognize that. But of course, we do whatever we can. We train, we have a disciplined life. As you earlier said, you need to train physically to be in order to be stable mentally in these, very tough times. But so there is no magic to us to.
Yes, frozen.
Yeah. I'll try and
kind of.
Naren, we lost you actually for the last 1 minute. Maybe you.
So I was just saying that very difficult time for everyone, and we kind of as sports persons we have a disciplined life anyway. So it's be it training or be it staying mentally fit and so on. So all this comes very naturally to us. So like everyone else, everything is moving at a snail's pace, especially from a racing point of view. I haven't traveled for the last 7 months. I think this calendar year does not exist anymore. We've taken it off off completely. But I'm eager to start going again, and to do that. In order to do that, you keep your schedules, your routines as they were pre-COVID. So that's how it is. If the life goes on. And we all look forward to coming out of this pandemic as soon as possible. And during this time, everyone has to stay safe, stay healthy, and mentally focused. That's how you're going to get out of this situation. That's how you're going to get to the finish line. That's how I see it.
Yeah. No racetrack, however smooth, can hurry our progress to the top. Yeah, well said. And apart from being practical, logical, one needs to be consistent and have patience, lots of patience to reach the pinnacle of success.
You said it. Great.
No doubt it is our experiences that shape us. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. Thank you. And now my question is for Tanya. Tanya, I'll flip that question around for you. And we have been hearing a lot about rapid or speed chess nowadays. On the face of it, it sounds like a complete antithesis of what chess has traditionally been. So do you think there is a speed versus skill debate there?
That's a very interesting question, Usha. I think from a chess perspective, we've been very fortunate that as the world has slowed down, as you and Naren were pointing out, and we're all trying to get through this very difficult phase, chess has in a big way moved online. And it's been a big boom in chess where even many non-professionals or players who used to like playing chess but gave it up at certain points have been able to find the time by being at home and getting into the game. The thing with online play is that attention is a very big question. So you can't have a classical format. It just can never work with an online audience. So we always have this, we have elite events, we have open tournaments, we have tournaments for all levels in a fast play, exciting format. It obviously caters to the fans, to the audience. It caters to the fun aspect of the sport. I think you're totally right that it's a very different animal from classical play, where of course you have more time to show your mind skills and your preparation, as well as how good you are at calculation, strategy, decision making, all these things, just outsmarting your opponent in a longer time format. But I also believe that a faster format of chess has very specific and very interesting skills involved as well. And actually some of them even more difficult than classical, because speed comes into play in a big way, your control over your nerves, your ability to calculate that much faster. So I think there's a sort of a compromise with, yes, a bit of quality of play, but with that comes in these different set of skills, which also makes the sport exciting. I personally prefer over the board classical chess and can't wait to get back to the board and get back to it once we're all able to come back to some normal form of life. But for now, this is a very exciting format as well. And I think for the fans and for chess players, it's something to be grateful for, that we can continue with chess in these difficult times.
Oh, that sounds great. From tournament games lasting anywhere from 6 hours to the longest one ever played being just over 20 hours. Chess has always meant time, deliberation, and patience.
Yes. I think it was very interesting to hear you and Narayan talk about what we can translate from learning from our sport into this difficult time, and the concept of what Narayan said about the patience factor, or learning to just deal with a difficult situation, which we learn in sports very early on, learning to fight circumstances which are not going according to you, because you need to come back to the field, you need to come back to the board or the racing track. I think definitely, yes, patience is something that comes with discipline, comes with routine, comes with something that we've learned, and it's definitely an aspect that is probably helping us a lot to deal with this time. That said, I have to say that I think this time that we've had off as athletes, we would never have this. I think we would just be so involved in our careers, in our traveling, that in many ways, this slowdown period to reassess things, to reassess structure, how we want to move forward, how we want to get better and stronger. I think if we can look at it positively like that, it will help us get through this difficult time as well.
It's really great to see how players have adopted to the new formats. And also it's really good to know that intrinsic values of the game have not been compromised. That's really great. Okay. Now over to Priya.
Yeah, thank you, Usha. Before we move on, Naren, here's a very basic question to help us understand the sport better, and don't kill me for this. What is the difference between Formula One racing and sports car racing?
Well, Formula One is the world championship. It's the pinnacle of motorsport, and all the big name drivers like Hamilton and Alonso and everyone else. So we all compete in Formula One. Sports car racing is more. It's still a world championship, but it's more. For me, the last couple of years, it's based more in Japan. There are the three largest manufacturers in the world involved in this sport. It's backed by, they have a lot of professionals, a lot of Formula One drivers who come here and drive in this format as well. And sports car racing, they kind of, at least visually, they try to look like road cars and not like Formula cars, the Formula One cars, which are completely different to what you and I drive on the road every day. So sports car racing is closer in terms of appearance to a road car, and that attracts a lot of fans because they relate to it more, better than a Formula One car. But it's in some geographic locations, they're very, very popular, and we have huge crowds, 100,000 people coming to the Fuji 500 race in Japan and so on. So and the format, the races are a little bit longer. We we have the 1,000-kilometer race, which is which is 3 times the distance of a Formula One race. The cars, of course, they're slower than Formula One cars, but these are the basic differences. But end of the day, they have, it's very, very competitive, both the series, and of course, Formula One, the ultimate satisfaction in driving these Formula One cars is something no other category in the world can replicate. But nevertheless, these are very, very high level championships, both of them.
Okay, so that means the car is outfitted differently, and the speeds that they can reach also. I think the Formula One cars, is there a difference, major difference in the speeds they can reach?
Yeah, there is a difference, but the technology they use sometimes is, the Formula One car seems basic compared to the sports cars we drive, because the regulations are such that you can do a lot more to the cars, and relevant technology for road cars are all developed through GT racing, sports car racing. So your more efficient engines, your hybrid systems, your safety systems, so many aspects come out of sports car racing.
And Autosport magazine called you the fastest Indian in the world, and the record is still yours. So tell us, which was your best race ever and why?
Well, I think what made me believe in myself is winning my first race in the British Formula 3 Championship. And I say this because the past winners have been the likes of Ayrton Senna, Damon Hill. So many successful Formula 1 drivers have all won in the British Formula 3 Championship. And once I started winning there, I knew I had what it takes to go all the way to the top, to Formula One. So that was, I think that was what made me, realize that I had what it takes to get all the way to the top.
Absolutely. I think you need the fearlessness to be coursing through your veins to reach that speeds and all that. So, and you're continuing to break your own records even now, so many years later. Incredible, really. Tanya, coming to you. So from speed, let's shift to endurance. Which was the longest game you ever played? Did you win it? Tell me, how important is it to have a positive attitude when playing a game? Whatever you feel the outcome could be, even especially when you feel that you could be losing that particular battle.
Okay, so talking about the longest game, I think in general in classical play, a game can last anything between the level that we play at, nobody blunders and loses in the first 20 moves or the first 1 hour. So a game can normally last anything between, let's say, 2 to about 6 hours of gameplay. And also, chess is not a knockout sport. So you have to come back, whether you win or you lose, you get back to the board every day, and your final ranking depends on your cumulative score across the days. So I think it's hard to say which has been my longest game, so to say, but of course a lot of games can be extremely difficult and complex and complicated and full of calculations and mind-boggling situations, but they can only last 2.5 hours. But they're so rich in their complexities that it feels like this game went on forever, but also the feeling after that is extremely satisfying, especially if you manage to win such a game. I think it's hard to say which is the longest game that I've ever played, but I'm sure that there have been games that have gone up to 6 to 7 hours of gameplay. So that's happened. The longest tournaments that I've played has been about 14 days. So it's 14 days of nonstop gameplay. And I think energy really comes into play, especially in the second half. And that's when games also start seeming to be very long. Talking about a positive mindset or what keeps you going when you're in a difficult position, I think this is an advice that different coaches that I've had throughout my career, has been one common advice that they've always given me, which has been harder to execute. But I think once you understand it and once you're able to execute it, helps a lot in gameplay, is that not to focus on the result and the consequence. You cannot be thinking about what is going to happen if you win or you lose a match. Your only job on the board is to find your next move. That's the only question that you need to answer at every step. what is, according to you, based on your knowledge and your understanding of the game, the resources that you have around you present on the board, what it is, according to you, the best move that you can make on the board. And that's the only thought that you need to keep on your mind. So often, especially when a lot is at stake, championships at stake, and you end up thinking about things like results and what will happen if I might lose. These are very normal human emotions. But I think the more professional that you get in your career, the more training that you have, you realize over time that it's very important to stay in that moment and try and just play good moves over the board. And this is also something I think that a lot of us can perhaps even, at least I try to even look at in other spheres of life, of not making decisions just constantly based on consequences, but you take a decision based on your understanding, and then you own up to the consequences that follow. And that's how you try and stay positive. You have a difficult situation, that's fine. If it's a difficult position on the board, there are always resources. If you try and look hard enough, you can always put a fight back. Yes, you might lose, but a lot of times you might win or save a difficult position as well. At the end of it, it's a sport. The margin of error in chess is just slightly higher than it is for Naren, I would say, where there's literally no margin for error. But it's something that you learn and get better at. And I think it's very important to not beat yourself over it, because I don't think anything good ever comes out of being too hard on yourself.
Wow, so well said. And no wonder then that chess is called a science, an art, and a sport all put together. And
Yeah.
also, I think, call for a lot of staying power, both mentally and physically.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting concept of whether chess is an art, science, or sport. I think from my perspective, I see it as a very beautiful intellectual sport. I see it as something where you always have a drive to get better at. The scope for improvement is so high. You're constantly developing your mind skills. And at the end of the day, it comes about wanting to win. And for me, I've been asked this question a lot of times, do you think chess is an art or science or sport? And for me, it's an all-out sport.
I think that's a spirit to, go into, And Usha, over to you now.
Yeah. Naren, this is for you. You are the first Indian Formula One racer and have raced in various continents. Tell us a bit about some memorable experiences.
Yeah, I think just to race all over the world and to be successful and to keep national anthem playing in different parts of the world, I think that itself is a very proud moment for not only me but for the entire motorsport fraternity. There are many proud moments. Many times a sports person has success, and every time kind of go to the next level or find success in whatever level we do and whatever we compete in. I think they're all memorable moments for sure. And the most memorable moment, I should say, is possibly leaving home at a very young age of 16 years old and going and living in the UK all by yourself, thousands of kilometers away from the comforts of your family, your home and everything, and then going and getting that success and winning in when you're still a teenager. I think that is a very strong memory in my head, and that has paved the way for many other things that came later in life. But I think the hardship and the taste of success together, there's some strong memories that keep that stay with you all the time. So as I told you, as a sports person, you it's the same time. Go through a lot of highs and lows, and there are some memories which are memories that possibly are not winning, but the memories that you made a mistake or so on, those also kind of make you a much stronger person, because you think of what you did wrong and then you always kind of try and get better at the next time around. So there are a lot of memorable moments. Of course, as I told you, the proudest moment is possibly my debut in Formula One. But for that to happen, there are so many other memorable moments along the way, for sure.
Yeah. Of course, our travels, be it for work or otherwise, teach us so many life lessons. And each one is different from the other. And I think this is the ability that that is the lifeblood for a long-lasting and satisfying career. All these memories.
I believe so too. Yes.
Yes. Now, Tanya, chess players are automatically assumed to possess a high IQ. How important is it to combine EQ with it, especially since chess is a mind game and you need to understand your opponent's objective to beat them?
Yeah, that's really, it's quite fascinating, this whole comparison, firstly, between chess players having a very high IQ. And honestly, it works great for us, and we don't want to fight that concept because people just by default think that we're very, very intelligent, and we'll just take that. But to be honest, I feel that chess definitely develops a certain kind of intelligence. I think it's certain mental skills like pattern recognition, your memory, your decision making, and perhaps there are certain other skills which maybe other fields develop more than chess would. And I don't think that one has to have a very high level of IQ to become a chess player, but I think that once you get into the game and with years of training, there are definitely certain mental skills that with hours of working on them, that they get better over time. I think with emotional quotient, it's a bit more complex to answer. It's not as tangible. I don't know what a chess player's EQ will be, but what I do know is that it's very, very important to have control over your nerves and to have the ability to sort of disconnect as much as you can from the chessboard and your emotions. Chess is a very non-emotional sport. It's you can play 35 amazing moves over the board, and then you make one bad move and there's no coming back from it. You can want to win a championship and you can want to do everything for it. You work hard for it, you do all the right things, but at the end of it, something can go wrong over the board. You can lose. It doesn't really match up to what you're feeling. The only high level of EQ you need to have is to detach yourself and not get very overpowered by the result. For example, if you have a bad day at office, if you have a bad day at the chessboard, coming back, crying over it and not being able to sleep over it is not going to really help you, because you have to go back and play again the next day. You have to take it as a sport. And I actually think that men do this better than women. I think and this is just a personal experience of mine. I think I've got so many friends who are male players in the chess world. I think somehow, at least for me, I can speak that I find it harder to get over a more difficult game. For example, for my friends who are, let's say, for them, it's just easier to see it as a sport. They're like, we messed up here, we analyze where we go wrong, and that's it. We are ready to go back the next day. So I still struggle with that. And I feel like it's something that perhaps needs more control over your nerves. And again, a certain level of detachment. I don't personally think that chess can help you improve your EQ. I think IQ, yes, EQ is questionable.
Yeah, I totally agree, Tanya. While it may not seem so dynamic or action-oriented like leadership, the abilities of self-awareness, self-analysis, and self-regulation have been quoted as a potent psychological catalyst for good endings.
Yes.
And the chess great Kasparov said, he channels his anger at losing a game into productive energy to win the next one. How nicely he put it.
Absolutely. And I think this is true for almost every sport, but I think in chess more so, because it's not a knockout game. Like I was saying, you have to go back to try and it's very hard. But if every loss you can convert it into a learning, it might take a long time. It might not even be the next game, but maybe over 6 months or 8 months, you will see a big jump in your game. And I think the most important thing is to not give up or to stop or to be too hard on yourself or to say that you're not strong enough for this. But to kind of learn, because at the end of it, it is a sport. You are going to win some, you are going to lose some. And I think if you can channel that into a positive thing, the difficult days, I think that's a very, very good sign.
Yeah, I like your spirit.
I try. I'm not very good at it in practice.
Over to you, Priya.
Yeah, but if you've lasted for so long, Tanya, I'm sure you're getting it right every time. So my question is for Naren. So what are you up to nowadays? And we've read a lot about your Japanese sojourn. So tell us a little bit about your time in Japan and racing there.
I mean, these days, of course, like everyone else, you're waiting it to kind of go by. It's like a bad dream where, you're kind of stuck in this dream, this night scenario. It's now been over 9 months. I think, as I told you earlier, it's going to be a complete washout in 2020. But I'm reviving the NK Racing Academy to develop some young drivers, which we had in the past, and so on and so forth. But a lot of time goes towards. I run a startup as well, so managing that startup, it's obviously got to do with the mobility and so on. Because of my background, and so that's how I spend the time. And of course, Japan is a great place for motor racing, and I'm so happy and glad I made it to Japan. And as a professional driver, once you start, getting results in Japan, I think they look after their drivers extremely well, and I'm very fortunate to be racing in Japan, one of the most renowned countries for the sport. So I think Japan is a beautiful place, and I have a lot of fans out there. When I won my race in the last race of the 2019 season in Japan, it was I think everyone kind of they were all very happy for me, and I drove for Honda as well, and I think the success was pretty good for everybody, and we were just waiting to hit the tracks again.
I read somewhere that you had to switch from to a two-seater format from the single-seater format that you've been familiar with for so many years. So kudos, Naren.
Right.
Switching and making that change is not so easy after so many years of driving a single-seater. And I think you found yourself a second family in Japan now, with all of them being your fans. I'm sure you'll be welcomed with outstanding fans whenever you go back.
Yes, definitely, yeah.
And all the best with all your new ventures, startup, your community startup, and all that.
Right.
And Tanya, on the that matter of doing something different, you are a commentator yourself now. So how are you enjoying the experience? And tell us a little about your other passions also. What else do you do?
I think it's easier to answer the latter question, not much else. Everything I do is somehow just around the sport. Definitely playing is still a very different adrenaline, and nothing matches to actually competitive sports. So that is still very much my first priority or first love, so to say, out of commentary and sports. But I do enjoy commentating a lot. The idea with chess commentary is, of course, to break it down to a mass audience who would otherwise find it very difficult to follow the complexities of professional play, because the level of chess is so high that even sometimes for other professionals, it's very hard to understand. So to sort of break down that mind action and mental action and explain the plans, because it might look like it might look like there isn't that much going on when you see it from a visual thing, but it is so rich and full of ideas and action and the way the brain is coming to conclusions that with commentary, the fun part is trying to break that down. For me, how it happened was the first one that I did was the World Championship match in Chennai between Magnus and Vishwanathan Anand. And that was in 2013. And I had no experience, and I just randomly got a call from the federation 5 days before the match. And they said, get on a flight and come here. And I had done a little bit of work around media, but not that much. And then I went there, and it was just, I mean, when I look back at those videos, you're always, in retrospect, you're like, what was I thinking? Why did I say that? But it was such a brilliant learning experience, and I enjoyed it so much. And just to be a part of that World Championship in a front row seat, watching these two legends was just such an inspiring moment for me as well. 2 years later, I made my second Grandmaster norm. I think I was so motivated from being a part of this championship. And from there it started. So I started doing it a bit more, a couple of times a year whenever I would get time. And it was something I enjoyed a lot because there are these super elite events that happen, which is where the top 10 players of the world play. So being a commentator for that event is a very, very interesting perspective to your own game, as well as the opportunity to interact with that atmosphere and that environment. I love it, and I really enjoy it a lot. And who knows, in the future, maybe I'll do more of it, but I still just am waiting to get back to over the board action.
So for commentating, you need to really read their minds, or how does it happen? I mean, how can you?
I wish I could read their mind. If I could read their mind, I would probably be playing and not commentating in those events. But it's not about reading their minds really, but as a chess player who's of a certain professional level yourself, you can understand ideas and plans and how a player came to a certain decision to make a move. And then you sort of break it down to an audience which doesn't play professionally through words, through explaining, and sort of just making it a fun, more interesting, more battle-like format rather than, watching two players make a move every 20 minutes. So the idea is to make chess exciting by showing variations, plans, what is the idea behind a move, why did a person feel threatened, the psychology, which we talk a lot about in commentary, because in chess it plays a very, very crucial role because you have a human opponent. So if you were playing against an engine, a computer, it would not be the same, but the game is alive because it's two people playing. So psychology, their past results, how the dynamics that work. So you kind of talk a lot about that. It's just a lot of fun, but no, you can't. And often you get it wrong as a commentator as well, but many times you get it right, and then you feel pretty good about yourself too.
Absolutely. I was wondering how you can interpret their, thoughts. Some 20 moves ahead they must be thinking. So.
You're very right. It's very hard because also, for example, when you're commentating on a physical sport, like let's say football or cricket, the action is happening as you're commentating. You're not predicting the action that's about to happen. You're not breaking down a thought process which people can't see. So it's definitely more challenging, but also very, very exciting. And like Usha ma'am also pointed out, with this online boom in chess, its commentary has been just amazingly received because so many players have just gotten into chess. And for them to watch a match between, let's say, Magnus or Vishy playing, that is what inspires players to take up chess. It's not with the idea that they're going to become that level one day, but with the idea that chess is so beautiful and so complex. So that's as a job of a commentator is to make that happen.
So how's the whole man versus machine thing panning out, Tanya? There's so much of online chess happening, and the machine is playing, and can we win against that? And how does it work?
I honestly just love this topic a lot, the whole man versus AI, and especially in chess. And I think it's very interesting. Of course, it all started with the Deep Blue IBM match between Garry Kasparov and IBM's machine. The first one, Garry actually won, but then Deep Blue got stronger. And I think that was the turning point when Garry lost that match. I think that was the turning point when actually AI in terms of strength overtook humans. Now it's come to a point where there's literally no point fighting against or playing against the AI, because the brute force is just so strong and so powerful. A machine can calculate so many variations, 300 moves in a second, calculating I don't know how many moves ahead. A human brain, even the smartest and the fastest human brain, cannot even compete with that. So now it's about working with engines and working with AI to become a stronger chess player. So we use that in our training a lot. We actually work with very strong chess engines to improve our own game. So the idea is not to compete against AI anymore, but to use it to your own advantage to become a stronger player.
Okay, I think all the children out there practicing should understand and, accept this, I think.
Yeah, but it's a beautiful thing. I don't think it's something to feel defeated about in any way, because AI has advanced in every single field. And I think if we can use it to actually become stronger in our own mind, I mean, why try and fight that? And also, it's very important to understand that, AI is great and to use the computer is great, but you need to also have a human coach, because what a human coach can tell you, an engine or a computer can never explain that. So if there's any parent or any parent who's trying to get their kid into the game, or any kid who's getting into it, definitely get human guidance. Don't rely on the computer, just the computer to improve your game.
Absolutely. I think that's where the EQ steps in also, right? That angle.
Exactly.
So over to Usha now for the finale question.
So let's end with the premise of this discussion. My question is to both of you now. What's the mental, physical, emotional prep process you follow to stay fit and in form? And what's that one winning strategy you swear by? The question is to both of you. I think first maybe
Tanya, you go.
I was just going to say, Naren, take it away. Okay, should I go first then? Okay, firstly about a winning strategy, I'm going to be really honest. I don't think there's a set formula. At least I haven't come across it. I don't think there is a recipe for winning every game. The only thing that I have learned in my career and in the work that I put in is that there truly is no substitute for the hard work that you do. Talent and support will get you far, and it's definitely important, but it cannot replace the actual work that you put into the game. And of course, I want to also reinforce the point that even though chess is a mind sport and a completely mental game, it is so important to have a level of physical fitness, because body and mind truly work hand in hand. And to be able to have your brain work to a good capacity for so many hours across so many days, stamina, your body, the ability to take that pressure, to take those nerves, physical fitness is very important. Everyone has their own formula of how they do it, and whatever works for you is great. For me, in general, I think eating healthy and trying to get some physical workouts in, and of course, again, just the actual chess practice is what works for me. And the only winning strategy I would say is to believe that you're strong. I think having confidence is the one thing in sports that you just cannot do without. And it's perhaps better to be overconfident than not to believe in yourself.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I share the same thoughts as Tanya. Of course, it's two different sports, but mentality has to be the same. I think the inner belief, the self belief that you can, kind of come what may, you get to that checkered flag first. That kind of helps a lot in competing with the best in the world, and that's inner belief is something that I always kind of bank upon a lot. It definitely helps, and everything else, as Tanya said, fitness, mental agility, everything goes hand in hand. You can't eat, you cannot eat, bacon burgers and drink beer and so on, and still go out there, compete with the best and beat them. Doesn't happen that way. A lot of self-discipline and that inner strength in you. Everything as a package, you become a winner. Just not only by talent. Talent is something that makes your life a little bit easier, but it doesn't make you, become 100% driver in my case, and in Tanya's case, I suppose a chess player. So I think both our beliefs are pretty similar, and I think every sportsman who competes at a very high level, I think they will give you the same exact answer as we do, for sure.
Okay, over to you, Priya.
Thank you, Tanya, and thank you, Naren, for sharing your insights and journey with us. It has been a power hour in the truest sense. Your career paths have demonstrated that both at the micro level and the macro level, sports teach us the value of accepting success with humility and defeat with dignity. That every risk will not pay off, that every play will not go your way. But the key to resilience is in being able to play effectively, and the same goes for life. Thank you so much for sharing all that with us. Having said that, we'll quickly move to our Q&A. We have a very, very little member of our audience wanting to ask a question. IT team, can you paint the spotlight on Spandana Kanuri?
That Nirvan?
I think that's Nirvan.
Yes.
Nirvan, your question, please.
I forgot what to say.
The question is for Naren, I think.
Yes.
Is Spandana there? Spandana, can you?
He wanted to ask Narayan Karthikeyan about how to become a race car driver at 6.
And what should he do every day?
And what he should do.
Great age to start. So I think it's the right age, and the younger the better. And he's only 6 years old, and karting, go-karting. There are many karting centers in I suppose you're in Hyderabad. So
Yeah.
I think it's a good way to start. Just a lot of fun, and it's pretty safe, and go for it.
Thank you.
Thank you, but I have a kid's car.
Okay. There's a question. Thank you, Nirvan. And Mahati Velamati wants to ask a question.
So it was a great session with both of y'all, indeed interesting and enriching. So my question goes to Tanya. Tanya, what advice would you give to future chess champions? Any specific experiences you had in the past which you would highlight for future chess champions to keep in mind?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think the one thing that is really, really important, because chess is a very difficult sport. It's a very difficult game. It takes many years to become very strong at it. The journey is not going to be easy. I think the most important thing is to truly love and enjoy playing chess. And if you don't get that feeling, or it's not something that you feel starting up, that, let's say you can't go a day without playing chess, or you can't go 2 days without playing chess, it's fine. And maybe, you can take it up as a hobby for sure. And anyway, it's going to be very beneficial because of the skills that chess develops, which you can translate to everything else you do in life. But to become a professional player, you have to just be hopelessly enjoy the game.
Totally agreed. Passion is all what it needs.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tanya. And Sarika Borugu, our events head, wants to ask a question.
Hi, Naren. This is for you. Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, hi.
Why is Formula One not a mainstream sport yet?
I suppose a couple of reasons, because the sport is still relatively new in India. As I told you, the recognition is just coming, has just started to flow in from the government. So I think, it's a very difficult sport to get in. It's not a mass sport. we lack the infrastructure. There are so many hurdles to it, and I suppose that's why it's still a niche sport. But you know, once these entry barriers become easier, one should imagine that there is a lot of interest in India, and there are a lot of young drivers who want to compete at a very high level, and we have some talented youngsters. So you know, going forward, I suppose we can, you know, it's going to get more and more into a mainstream kind of sport.
Okay.
That's what I believe.
Thank you.
There's a question from Shubhra Maheshwari, our Vice Chairperson, for Tanya. Is Shubhra there? She's left it in the chat box.
Hi, Tanya. So,
Hi.
Tanya, my son started chess at the age of 7 randomly. He just started, and very quickly, in a period of 1.5 years, he could reach the state level.
Amazing.
Unfortunately, he started losing every tournament at the state level. 3 tournaments he lost, and he said, "Bas, that's it. I'm not going to be doing it again." Wherein the coaches feel there is a spark. So, how do we get a demotivated child back?
Yeah, and that's totally fine, and that's totally normal for him to feel that way. I think this is where there's a big role to be played by all of you and his support system. I think, of course, the moment he gets that one win or one good tournament, it's going to flip around. So what I can suggest to you is that maybe for a couple of months, or I wouldn't say too long, but let's say 3 to 4 months. Anyways, there aren't any tournaments happening currently. If he can keep up his practice and keep up his training right now in a disciplined way, and especially because you mentioned that the coaches believe that he's actually really good and see talent in him, and in 1.5 years to reach state level is no joke. I think that's already a very it's an amazing feat already. So if you can just encourage him by keeping his training going, maybe he can play online chess right now, and if the coaches can make him solve things on the board which he's able to solve, which gives child a confidence. I think it's very important for a young child who gets into sport to get that confidence that he's good at it. So many times what coaches can do is to actually give positions which might be a little easy, so to say, but it kind of builds that, you know, if you give one difficult position, give 3 easy positions, then give another difficult position to solve. So it builds up your mental skill, but also more importantly, it builds up that confidence level. If he can keep his practice going for the next few months, and you can make him understand that results just don't matter at all. And I was telling you my own story. I literally scored 0 out of 11 in my first state championship. Had I quit at that time, I wouldn't be sitting here. So, you know, it's just, you just have to kind of make him understand that it's totally fine. And you know, just keep working on the game, and it'll take that one win for him to change his mindset.
Thank you so much, Tanya, for the words of motivation.
Thank you, Shubhra.
Rachna Goenka has a question for Naren, and this is very interesting. Is Rachna there? Can we spotlight her? Otherwise, I am going to read out. Is she there? Can you check? IT team? Rachna Goenka.
Oh, Priyash is not available.
So her question is to Naren, what was your experience talking to Michael Schumacher? Tell us about the racing great.
So yeah, you kind of you know, as I was growing up and I was racing, you look up to him, but then when you finally make it, then he becomes a competitor. So the equation completely changes. It's a very individualistic sport. Of course, I was very proud of competing against him. And you know, my first race, I in fact, you know, qualified 11th, and he was I think few places back. So it kind of you know, it was a nice feeling for sure. But then, you know, he's you know, he's a man with so much of you know, success, and you know, it was always nice to, you know, get some kind of you know, tips and interaction to you know, with Michael himself. So of course I know his son pretty well. He's turning out to be an amazing racer in Formula 2. I kind of coached him, helped him out in some of the races which he did in Asia. So I know Mick quite well, and it's unfortunate that Michael is in such a bad state. But we all hope and hope that we will see him out being as normal as he can very quickly, and that's how it is.
Thank you. Thank you, Naren. We'll taking one last question. This is from actually Iram Zaidi and Neha Reddy both have more or less, kind of their questions are around the same thing. And I'll just read out. I'll read out Iram's first. And Iram is asking, sport is known to advance gender equality and women's empowerment. Yet there are reports of an underlying gender bias. What's your respective take on this? And Neha is also saying, what do you feel is our role as a society to ensure more and more girls consider sports as a serious career option? So I think, Tanya, you can take that, and that will be your final question for today.
I think I'll address the role of us to help to encourage more girls to take up the sport. I think the first thing that comes to mind is kind of not bringing them up in an atmosphere where it's like you're encouraging girls to take up sport. It's you're encouraging your child to take up sport. You're not encouraging her to become the best female player in a sport that she's interested in, but just to become the best player that she can through her skill, through her hard work, and wherever she goes. I think it's very young when you start blurring these gender lines, and where if parents are able to kind of put this into the girl's mind that it doesn't, it's not about that only boys should go out and play sports. Like, that shouldn't even be a conversation. If a girl enjoys playing sports, she's tried out different things and she likes a sport, you encourage her as a sport person and not as a woman sports player or as a girl taking up sports. So I think that mindset has to evolve to actually bring in some sort of the gender equality that the other question was about. And I think definitely sports breaks gender barriers 100%, because I think it doesn't matter where you're from, especially in chess, because in chess we play in open events. In chess we compete against the male players. There are, of course, at the world championship or the continental tournaments, you've got the women title as well as the men title, but we've got open tournaments where we play against our male counterparts, and we try and win and we fight for the prizes. But at the end of it, what matters is not whether you're a girl or a boy or which part of the world you come from or what's your economic background. What matters is what you bring to the board. What matters is how much work you put in, what skill you show on the board, how good you are at the game. And I think in that way, I think sports is one of the biggest tools and the best tools to promote a fair equality truly based on skills, where you're not trying to divide, you're not trying to say that women are better or men are better, but actually you're bringing them together. And I think that's the path where people work together to achieve any sense of social equality. I think when you try and divide and empower one over the other, or try and, divide it further, I feel like it beats the cause. And I think in that way, sports is the perfect tool. It also encourages so many amazing mental skills, discipline in your life that we've spoken about in this session so much. Your ability to make decisions, your ability to be accountable for those decisions, your self-confidence, your belief system. I think whether you become a professional player or not, putting your child, boy or girl, into sports is a decision that nobody has ever regretted.
Absolutely. I think that's quite a leveler, sport. Yes. And Karin, do you want to take that question on gender equality, or do you echo?
Yeah. Motor racing is always seen as a, male-dominated sport. And unfortunately, like every other, like tennis, any other physical sport like tennis and squash and shuttle, what have you, there is a women's tennis and a men's tennis. Here, we mix together and we play, we compete with each other. And the only, slight disadvantage for a female driver would be not the skill sets. I think it's the physical effort that takes to drive these cars, because they are very, very physical. You're going through 5Gs in a corner, and you need a lot of brute strength. That's the only downfall. But I'm sure there are many, many good racing drivers, girl racing drivers. But unfortunately, I think because of this being an issue, it takes there's only one Formula One driver in the 70s, Nila Lombardi from Italy, who scored a world championship point. After which there have been only two more in the last 20, 30 years to have competed in Formula. This is changed a lot. The cars are made a little bit easier for them to adapt and so on physically. So I think going forward, we're going to see a lot more female drivers taking up this sport, I think that's a really good thing to happen.
Thank you.
I want to add something to what Naren said, because I think it's very fascinating. Because in chess, it's the same thing. We've got all of us participating together, but still, there's been only one female player in the history of chess who's broken into the world top 10, who's Judith Polgar. And it doesn't go on to say that one gender are they more intelligent than the other gender. But I think in chess, there are so many other factors that have come in. Also, primarily that chess as a sport for women is a very new sport, as a career option, as something that women can take up. Also, it's a long sport. In a lot of countries, there are a lot of social, cultural factors that come into play. And I feel that entire structure has to be somewhere at the root, evolve and change. And we are seeing that happen. We're seeing more girls take up unconventional sports. We're seeing more girls achieve a lot at the top level. And I think as that happens, we'll have a bigger root base of young girls and boys taking up sports together. And hopefully in the future, we won't have one professional F1 woman racer, and we won't have one Judith Polgar, but we'll have many of them. But that belief has to start from very young.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Yeah, I with Tanya's thoughts on this, and I think the world is moving. If it's evolving, sport is evolving, so it's only a matter of time that gender won't matter anymore, and we all compete at the same platform, and that's going to happen very soon in many forms of sport. That's my firm belief.
Thank you. So with that, we come to the end of this very, very engaging conversation. I'm sure you all will agree. And thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Naren, for joining us here at Flow Hyderabad. I would like to quickly invite Senior Vice Chairperson Umachi Gurupati to propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Naren. That was a very, very nice talk. Thank you so much to everyone at FICCI.
Let me say thank you to you. Yeah. Good evening, all. We have witnessed a very energizing and stimulating session today with two sports persons we are very proud of. When there is a will, there is a way, very truly said. And also, Tanya, you said patience, endurance, all these are very much required in a game. I totally agree as a marathon runner myself.
Wow.
So the willingness, patience, perseverance, and endurance, these are the things which are very, very important in any sport or in the life to go forward. So there is often a belief that all those who are successful were successful throughout their career. In fact, champions are those who cope with their difficulties, setbacks, or losses better than their opponents. Winners are those who handles the failure better. Winning builds confidence, increases motivation, builds cohesion and team spirit. Finally, winning can be defined as self-improvement or goal attainment. Naren, the first Formula One driver of our country, spoke in a very calm and composed manner, but what he shared has created adrenaline rush in the viewers and also listeners. Thank you so much for joining today. So, Tanya, the Women Grandmaster, thank you for sharing your views with us. And they are very motivational, and we really enjoying listening to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, ma'am. That was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
It's nostalgic recollection of the past era, and happy knowing about an unknown side of Mr. Kakarla Karthikeyan. It's always nice to know the positiveness of a person. Our gratitude to the gold sponsors Polman Group, event sponsors Green Honda, branding partners RBC Worldwide, and gifting partners Pushpam Publications. Our sincere thanks to all the past chairs, flow members, Pan India, media, and all the other viewers for being with us today. And all those who involved worked hard in bringing this inspirational program. Thank you all once again. And the carry home today is, there may be people that are talented than you, but there is no excuse if others work harder than you. You are never a loser until you quit. So with that, I end my thanking note. Thank you and have a great week ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Uma. Can we have the closing slides, please?
Green Honda is the largest authorized Honda car dealership in Telangana. As you're aware, Honda is known for its reliability, ease of drive, and overall superior technology, ranging from Honda Amaze, Jazz to segment-leading Honda City, Civic to luxury CR-V. We have wide range of premium cars to suit all types of customers and their needs. Our automatics are the best in city driving. If approved by FICCI Flow Hyderabad, we would like to extend a special FICCI discount to all its members of this organization who purchase a car from Green Honda. Reach us on the below number. Thank you.
Thank you all once again for joining us here this afternoon. Hope you all enjoyed it. Until we meet again, stay safe, stay positive, stay happy. Namaste.
Namaste.